Get started. So, hi, thank you for joining us today. My name is Megan. I am a Green Corps member serving at the Minnesota State Energy Center of Excellence with the director, Logan Schrader. In the past, the center has hosted a large energy education for educators event once a year, but we've decided to do 4 this year. And our first one is with District Energy St. Paul. So they're going to talk to us a little bit about energy production at their sites and a little bit about careers in energy for our first event of the year. After the presentation, Logan and I will provide everyone with some information about the Energy Center and some resources we have. Also, we would love to have some discussion and questions, so be sure to come up with some along the way. Yeah, if Madeline and Janae would like to get started, they will tell us about District Energy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan, and thank you so much for hosting Madeline and I today. Madeline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Johnson, and I'm a Senior Communications and Engagement Specialist with District Energy St. Paul. So Janae and I work really closely with all the folks at the plant to do all the good work that we do and work with customers that are on the system.
And I'm Janae Bott, Director of Marketing and Public Relations at District Energy and Evergreen Energy. And we, as we'll discuss, serve the footprint of downtown St. Paul, which includes 13 of the state's buildings and some additional space that the state rents. So chances are we're providing you some heat today. So I thought it would be helpful to just kind of ground this conversation in some topics that you might be teaching in your classrooms or some things you might be covering when you're talking about STEM courses, whether that's energy, engineering, technical, community, resiliency, and community aspects. So I just wanted to kind of ground the conversation in some of those topics. If you have any questions, you're welcome to stop me and ask questions. I will then go through some of what District Energy does in St. Paul, some projects that we are doing in Minnesota beyond St. Paul. And then I wanted to cover some green jobs in the state and also some jobs we have specifically within our organization. So just grounding us in kind of climate change and climate action. So I think we're all seeing a variety of ways in which climate is impacting our communities, citizens in the United States, as well as economies, from wildfires to flooding, to extreme cold, no snowfall, lots of snowfall in areas we're not expecting. So all of these things obviously are a bit unusual and connected to this cycle that we are in now of climate change. So some climate action that I think is important for us to just keep in mind is the Paris Climate Agreement, which is looking to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius compared with pre-industrial levels. In the US, we have also had goals on climate reduction that are around emissions, carbon-free electricity, net zero economy. It's really, it's great in these goals that we're thinking about economy and how, our goods move, how our goods are produced, those kinds of things as well, and what our jobs look like. And then that 40% investment in disadvantaged communities. So those are the Justice 40 communities that some of the recent federal spending has really looked to prioritize. In Minnesota, we also have goals. There's a great climate action framework that was put out in 2022, and they are looking to update it in 2025. And if you're interested in getting involved, they're actually looking for volunteers to help with some of that. So some of the Minnesota specific goals around carbon neutrality by 2050. You may all be aware that in 2023, the state passed a 100% clean electricity, carbon-free electricity by 2040 goal. The Minnesota Action Plan includes carbon neutrality, resilient communities and businesses, and then equity. I think we all are aware that some of the disparities in climate impacts are around race and socioeconomic situations. So this Minnesota plan includes transportation, climate smart natural and working lands. So ag is actually has a big impact on climate emissions, resilient communities, clean energy and efficient buildings, healthy lives and communities, and clean economy. So that's just to kind of base us in some climate action at a state level, national level, and then kind of what the world is working on. And of course, everything's a little bit in flux as we adjust to a new administration. So then I just wanted to kind of ground us in the context of buildings. So when we think about carbon, these are some numbers that are put out by the United Nations Environmental Program. And I'm going to show you the 2022 numbers, but I actually prefer how the 2021 numbers are displayed. So there's only 1 degree different, or 1% difference on both of these in the older numbers. So I just like how this is arranged because it breaks out transportation. So when we think about climate, or we think about greenhouse gas emissions reductions, one of the things I like to think about is kind of where do we see sectors going? So transportation, we have a pretty clear idea that we're moving towards electric vehicles. We're thinking about maybe how hydrogen would play into some of those things. We're also thinking about, there's actions specifically even in Minnesota around fuel for airplanes and that kind of thing. So transportation kind of has a pretty clear path on where they are headed. Energy production, moving towards solar, wind, hydro, if it can be done sustainably, and then just thinking of how geothermal can work both for electricity production as well as heating and cooling. So energy production also has some pretty clear ideas, including storage. And some of that energy production is related to buildings. So this section where you see on the energy side and the emission side that are non-residential buildings, that includes commercial buildings, residential buildings, or all of our houses. And then building construction also has, there's a lot of embodied carbon in just building materials and building construction. So if you look at that 35% on energy and 38% on emissions, that is really what we're talking about when we're talking about the building sector. And so how we heat and cool the buildings that we work in, and then some of that is also attributed to electricity. So you can see that buildings and our built environment has a really big impact on both energy use and emissions. So what we're going to be talking about today is district energy, and I wanted to start with this graphic because it's kind of a lovely mix of where we're headed. So district energy is the concept of producing heating and cooling in one place and then distributing it out to multiple buildings. So the state capitol or the state buildings complexes is a really good example because you have a mass of several buildings together. You have the Capitol, and then you have the Senate office building, and several of those buildings right together. If those buildings were not served by District Energy St. Paul, they might have their own district energy system. So that would mean that they would have a plant on site, and then they would distribute heating and cooling through water to all of their buildings for space heating, space cooling, domestic hot water. So anytime an entity owns all of the buildings, district energy makes a lot of sense. So you see it on nearly every college campus, corporate campuses, or government complex campuses. But you can also see this within communities. So we do have some residential neighborhoods that are building thermal energy networks so that houses can be heated and cooled together, and not just a one-off, natural gas connection in each basement. So a really exciting thing about this is once you have that district energy network built out, what makes your heating and cooling can change. And we'll talk about district energy specifically, but this illustration is really showing you some geo-exchange and geothermal options, as well as some waste heat options. So if we're using traditional geothermal, which is the image on the far right, where you see multiple coils together, so that is just using the ground for heating and cooling. You can also use aquifers under the ground. So this is a groundwater heating and cooling option. And then if you see in the top right corner of this illustration, we're actually taking, in this example, we're taking heat from the groundwater remediation system. So this is an example that was actually built out for Rice Creek Commons. If anyone's familiar with that, that brownfield, it actually has a water remediation system that produces heat that could be used within this building system. So I'll get into those details, but just wanted to talk about district energy as a technology, is this idea of sharing energy across buildings and between buildings. So then, just giving you a little bit of history about District Energy St. Paul. So this is in 1983, even though these pictures are black and white and make it look a little bit older. This was in 1983. So District Energy started serving its first customers, which is actually the George Latimer Library, just next to our plant. in downtown St. Paul in September. So this was groundbreaking in March of '83, and we started serving customers in September of 1983. So before District Energy St. Paul was established in the 80s, there had been, really starting in the early 1900s, there was a energy generating facility in the same location on Kellogg Boulevard. We're right next to the Science Museum, that was producing electricity for the streetcars in St. Paul. And the leftover steam heat from that process was then distributed to a few buildings in St. Paul to heat those buildings. So in the 80s, when the Clean Air and the late 70s, the EPA was formed, the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts were put into place. And as Northern States Power was looking at their production facilities, this was a facility that was identified to be shuttered. So, so the mayor at the time, George Latimer, some of you may be familiar with him, he just recently passed away. He was a 5-term mayor in St. Paul, but he wanted to see if there was a way to do something different for St. Paul that could bolster those buildings that had that connection and maybe expand the system. So they brought in some Swedish engineers, and District Energy St. Paul was born. It was one of the first steam to hot water conversions in the United States. So we'll talk about the technology in just a minute, but so we were one of the first steam to hot water conversions in the US, and the system was designed to provide an example to other energy systems about what is possible in the 80s as a modern district energy system of the 80s. We have now moved beyond this model to even what we would consider more modern or 4th and 5th generation systems. So this is a 501c3 nonprofit utility, District Energy St. Paul. We were really formed from a public-private partnership, and that includes support from the federal government, state government, county, and cities. Our system actually provides heating and cooling for state buildings, 1 federal courthouse, Ramsey County buildings, as well as City of St. Paul buildings. So all of those groups came on as customers, but also were vocal in their support for this kind of system and this kind of innovation in St. Paul. So we do heat 80% of the buildings in downtown, and we cool 65% of the buildings in downtown. This gives you a timeline of our development over the years. So we take that model for the nation challenge very seriously, and we've innovated within our last 40 years of service. So heating started in '83, we brought on cooling services in '93. We have 2 large thermal storage tanks on the system, which really act as a battery for cooling for us. There's one at our Kellogg plant, and then there's one on 10th Avenue that is right kind of at that where 94 and 35 meet. You can see it right across from Regents Hospital. It's kind of a copper colored tank, and that is it holds chilled water to distribute to our customers. In 2003, we started a combined heat and power facility, which uses wood waste from the metro area to produce heating for downtown. The solar thermal array that's on top of the River Center is integrated into our system, and it was the first solar thermal array connected to a district energy system in the US. We studied in 2015 geothermal and wastewater heat sources for the system. We've actually come back to that study again in 2024. We eliminated coal in 2019. In 2021, we started offering all of our customers carbon neutral cooling. So what that means is we take what Xcel is already producing on the grid as carbon-free, actually as renewable electricity. We're not counting the nuclear right now, but the carbon-free renewable electricity, so from wind, solar, that's on the grid, and then we actually buy RECs to cover the rest of the electricity so that our customers, all of our customers, are getting carbon neutral cooling from us. And we introduced an advanced metering system, which is supported by a customer portal so that customers can see their data and their energy use trends themselves. And right now we're underway with a hydrogen project with Caterpillar in the Department of Energy. And I'll talk more about our wastewater heat recovery study at the end of the presentation. And then our carbon neutral goal matches the cities of 2050. Of course, we would love to do a big project and be there faster, and hopefully we will be. So for District Energy St. Paul, this is another illustration of a district energy system. So we are producing hot water and chilled water at our plants that then travels through a network. It's pumped through a network of underground pipes, and we're sending hot water to buildings. They're then using that to go through their heating or their heating systems, and heating spaces, heating domestic hot water that comes out of your faucets or out of your showers. And then they send that water back to us and we reheat it again. So this is a really efficient closed loop system. Same thing on the cooling side. To cool a building, you're actually removing heat and humidity. So we send out chilled water to customers, they run it through their air conditioning systems, and we bring that heat back to the plant and chill that water down again. So again, a very efficient closed loop system. We have more than 56 miles of pipe in downtown, which is under sidewalks, under streets, throughout the downtown area. So aggregating these thermal loads really allows us to integrate technology and fuels that would not be possible at a building level, including that thermal storage, that chilled water thermal storage that I mentioned. So these are all things that we're able to incorporate because we are heating and cooling at scale that would not be available really for single buildings. Once you buy a boiler, you're kind of wedded to that until it gives out and you need a new one. So this is our heating and cooling footprint in downtown. So you can see where the state capitol buildings are. We also serve Empire Drive to the north. The Mount Airy homes are all those small townhouses on the north side. And then we have one pipe that goes across the river for heating on the west side, goes down to the community center over on the west side. We serve to the CHS ballpark on the east side, and then on the west side, we're serving St. Paul College. And again, we have hospitals. All the hospitals in downtown are on our system. So the college and the hospitals and the state would probably have their own district systems if they didn't have the convenience of having district energy really right at their doorstep. So our pipes are direct buried. This is a picture of some of our pipes. So that's a steel pipe, which has insulation around it. There's leak detection wires within that insulation, and then a poly jacket that keeps that all safe from any water pipes or anything else breaking. So this is our plant on Kellogg, which anyone coming from a tour would have a chance to go through. So the brick building is the building that's been there for 100 years, and then the kind of copper and silver building, that is our combined heat and power facility. So we are producing 25 megawatts of electricity and 55 megawatts of heat. So that's combined heat and power. It means you have one input and you're getting two products out of it. So we're getting renewable electricity and renewable heat. This is fired on wood with some natural gas in the mix to just make sure that that wood burns completely. And we are using, we get 67% of the wood waste within the Twin Cities. So this really is a waste management solution for cities and counties. And the EPA considers this carbon neutral because it is biogenic carbon. So burning trees gives off carbon, but it's the same carbon that has been in our system since pre-industrial times, whereas using fossil fuels is adding to carbon in our atmosphere. So this accounts for 80,000 tons of carbon per year that is considered carbon neutral within the city's carbon footprint. This is just a list of our heating assets. We do have fuel flexibility, so natural gas and oil. Right now we're in these really cold days, we sometimes get curtailed by Xcel. So right now we are operating on fuel oil. The combined heat and power plant is listed here, and then Regions has a boiler that we're able to mobilize for the system if we need to. We have mobile boilers for when we're adding customers or doing repairs. And then the solar thermal array contributes also to our renewable heating. On the cooling side, we have two locations. So we have chillers at the Kellogg plant, in addition to the 2.5 million gallons of storage. And at 10th Street, we have three chillers with 4.2 million gallons of storage. And that 10th Street plant, we're able to actually operate from Kellogg. And then we have a few customers that have their own chillers. So Regions Hospital has a chiller, the state complex has a chiller that they use for load shedding, and then the Xcel Energy Center has a chiller that's dedicated just to keep the ice nice and cold. So for hockey. When you're thinking about the mechanical systems within a building, so what our customers are looking at, they have the same internal building system as if they had their own boilers and chillers. So these pipes are circulating water throughout the building, and those are going to air handlers or fan coil units or radiators to heat spaces, or to domestic hot water for the water that comes out of your faucet or your shower. So those internal building pipes would be there if they had chillers or boilers. What we are replacing is these small, what are illustrated as small gray units here. This is a heat exchanger. So the building water is going through one side of that heat exchanger, the district energy water is going through the other side of that heat exchanger, and they're transferring the heat. So the water doesn't mix, but the heat is transferred. So we're transferring heat to the building on the heating side, and then we're transferring building heat to our system on the cooling side. So one benefit of being on the district system is this mechanical footprint can be really small within a building, and there's no need for cooling towers on the building that you would have if you had your own systems within, if you were producing your own energy. This also means that a building could avoid having a natural gas connection if they were connected to district energy. So they'll still be an Xcel customer for electricity, but they would not need a natural gas connection for a boiler for their heating or domestic hot water within the building. So it really can eliminate some of that natural gas infrastructure. Just talk a little bit about the biomass that we use. So we are getting, so any wood waste that's going to a city, a county, or even a commercial lot within the Twin Cities, is 67% of that is coming to District Energy St. Paul. So we're getting, storm and disease damaged trees, which includes emerald ash borer trees, any tree trimmings, habitat restoration, and then any byproducts from anyone that works with wood. There are some people who use wood for other purposes that would be kind of taking it out of this waste stream, if you're mulching for gardens and that kind of thing. At the end of the summer, when those landscapers are done and still have leftover mulch, even that would come back to us. So higher best use is finding its way kind of in this commercial landscape, and then we are really we're kind of the place of last resort for wood waste. So that's a little bit about district energy, and I want to shift now to some kind of updates on what is being done now to have low carbon energy systems. So we're actually working to build 2 aquifer thermal energy storage systems within the Twin Cities. One of them is at the Heights, which we got to put the pipes in this summer before the roads are being put in at the Heights. I don't know if you're familiar with that brownfield redevelopment, but it was a golf course. It was the Hillcrest Golf Course, and now it's being converted to part of the neighborhood. So there'll be residential buildings as well as industrial buildings for jobs on the site. So, and it'll get new streets, so it'll just look like it's incorporated into the east side of St. Paul, like a neighborhood. But for 10 of the buildings there, we are building an aquifer thermal energy storage system. So that's 6 residential buildings and 4 light industrial buildings. So what this means is we will have a district system similar to the district system in downtown St. Paul, but then we will be using the aquifer. We will be using the residual heat in the aquifer to heat buildings, and then removing heat in the summer to use that again in the winter to cool buildings. So the way that this works is the aquifer itself is between 50 and 60 degrees, and we just take that aquifer water and run it through a heat exchanger so that we're taking that 50 or 60 degrees and transferring it to the district system, and then they use a heat pump to bump that temperature up to 120 degrees or 140 degrees of what they need in the buildings, or to bump it down to 42 degrees for cooling. So this is electrifying building heating, but it's not 100% electricity, which is can be cost prohibitive to have 100% electric heating. But using this aquifer gets you to that 50 to 60 degrees, and you just need the electricity for that additional bump up to use for heating and cooling, or bump down for cooling. So, so this really is, again, a way to avoid natural gas infrastructure. So the Heights, they have some Habitat for Humanity buildings there. And between that and this system, there will not be new natural gas infrastructure built on that 116-acre redevelopment, which is really exciting. So we have favorable hydrogeology in the state of Minnesota to do this. It is permitted through the Department of Health, and we will not harm the aquifer. So, and then when this is coupled with renewable electricity, you really are getting to a carbon-free heating and cooling system for these buildings. One other option, so that is using the aquifer. One other option is to use waste heat. So we just produce a lot of heat. Anything that's industrial, really making energy produces a lot of heat. So any place you see a cooling tower, there might be potential to use that heat. So a cooling tower, the purpose of that is to reduce the heat, to make that heat lower so that when you let it go into the atmosphere, it's not warming up the atmosphere. So that's the purpose of a cooling tower. If you see a cooling tower, there is a chance that you might be able to use some of that heat in a productive way. So what we've looked at in both St. Paul and Duluth is taking heat from the water treatment system. So when we take showers, when we cook, when we do laundry, there's a lot of hot water that gets, that's been heated with natural gas or been heated with electricity that gets basically poured down the drain. And that when it gets to the water treatment facility, it still has a lot of residual heat in it. So in St. Paul, we're looking at a 50 to 60 degree, once it actually goes through the treatment process and comes out the other side, it's still at 50 to 60 degrees. In Duluth, because of the industry they have in that city, they're, after the water is treated through the water treatment process, they are looking at 80 to 90 degree water coming out of their system. So they have a lot of potential for using that for something else. So in St. Paul, we have looked at the largest water treatment facility in the Twin Cities is on Pig's Eye Island. So you can see the small red line that would potentially connect the wastewater treatment facility to District Energy St. Paul to reuse that waste heat that's coming out of that treatment process. We would then have a heat pump on site that would bump it up to the additional temperature needed for heating or bump it down to the temperature needed for cooling. So because the carbon that it took to heat up that water for your laundry, to heat up that water for your shower has already been accounted for, waste heat is considered carbon neutral. So this would be a great solution for really buildings downtown. And if we did this combined with the wood, it would literally decarbonize 200 buildings in downtown St. Paul. So very exciting opportunity. We are looking for some grant funding for this. We applied for an EPA grant in the spring that we did not win, but we are continuing to work with the city and the Metropolitan Council to see how we might be able to move this project forward. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about energy jobs, and then we can open it up for questions. We have a great resource here in the Twin Cities. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, but they put out a couple of reports every year that are really helpful and just kind of give us a moment to check in on how things are going. So they do a report with Bloomberg that's about energy. So the Bloomberg organization does a national report. It's like the energy report card. And then Clean Energy Economy Minnesota does the same statistics for the state of Minnesota. So they put that out every year, every 2 years. And then they do a jobs report also. So this is a great resource for all of you to consider. Clean Energy Economy Minnesota does really great work. They work on policy in the state of Minnesota. And one of the things they're very interested in is building the clean jobs in the state. So you can see they have a goal of 100,000 clean jobs. And as of 2024, they're saying that we have hit that 62,000 clean jobs in Minnesota, which is really exciting. This area is a faster growth than other areas of the economy in the state. 71% of these clean jobs are coming from small businesses, which is exciting to think about how that economy, kind of all along the production chain or all along the supply chain, those things are changing. So really getting to those kind of cleaning the economy goals, it's great to see that these small businesses are included. And then 11% of the clean energy workforce is veterans. And I know that for us specifically, we have 25% of our workforce is veterans. So this is a group of individuals that are well trained to work in the energy field based on the training that they get through their service to our country. I just wanted to dive in a little bit more to this, although I don't have kind of all of these details to back it up, but just wanted to look at what the sectors are. So when we look at this number of 62,000 jobs, what does that really mean? And these are the categories by job sector. So really thinking about energy efficiency. So that's traditional HVAC, but also how do you improve the efficiency of buildings? And things like that. So that energy efficiency, which is really about homes and commercial buildings. Alternative transportation, so that's electric cars, the electric car charging stations, kind of all of that kind of work. There's also grid and storage, so working on the electrical side, what does that look like? Renewable energy generation, which is both electricity. I mean, when you're thinking of this, they're probably almost always talking about electricity, but it is important to remember that the buildings need to also be included in that energy generation for heating and for cooling. And then thinking about clean fuels. So I will just say from my experience, in each of these sectors, you definitely need the kind of the highly educated, the people with advanced degrees or advanced experience to work on some of these things, but they also need people who are in the technical fields and the trades, who work in HR and accounting and marketing to make these companies and make these kind of systems work. So there's a wide range of jobs in kind of each of these sectors. And then I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about our company specifically. So Evergreen Energy is the company that all of our employees work for. So we actually operate and manage District Energy St. Paul. And so, when I give you this list, these are all not necessarily based right in St. Paul, but we work in 5 states, and these are the kinds of employees that we have across our whole system. So we are very, very heavily based on the trades, and this is everything from the person who works for 12 hours and makes sure that everything at the plant is running as it should, to the mechanic or maintenance person that they would call if there's a problem. So this is really a wide range of expertise. It's a wide range of training. It's a wide range of what the daily job looks like. So we have a lot of people, I say all the time, I think teachers have a hard time with kids who can't sit still. Our business could not run without all those kids finding their way to our jobs. So there is a place for them. There is a great place for them, and they can make a very good living. So most of these folks, especially in the trades, are not sitting behind a desk every day. So they are in the field, they are in the plant. They are doing hands-on work that they have been well trained for. I will say specifically about the kind of boiler operator and HVAC technicians that not only for our business, but for our customers are really having a hard time finding some of these folks as people retire or as they age out of the workforce. So there are not a lot of people who are going and getting a boiler operator's license or that kind of training. So some of what we have had to do in our company is just figure out how to train some of these people or bring them in at a different level and then train them up to be an operator or a boiler operator. We do have engineers, and for our work that tends to be mostly mechanical. We also have civil engineers and electrical engineer, environmental engineers, so they're really looking at, what's the impact of building, that kind of thing. We do have expertise for modeling energy, modeling costs, modeling emissions, and then we have CAD and GIS specialists both within our organization, as well as I'm sure there's a whole wide range of other technical softwares that our teams are using. Instrumentation and controls is really big. So this is all of our systems are monitored. The more we can put sensors on so that those things are monitored automatically and we're just able to read the feedback is great. We have meters in all of the buildings. We have leak detection systems within our pipes, so that instrumentation and controls is a huge part of our business. And with machine learning and AI, it is only getting bigger. So, some of the older systems like District Energy St. Paul, we have to have staff on site 24/7 because we have boilers running, and it's just such a dynamic system that we literally have someone in the building every day of the year. Whereas some of the newer systems that are those geothermal electrical systems can actually be monitored from afar and don't require someone to be sitting in a building 24 hours a day. And so those instrumentation and controls and making sure things are accurate are more important than ever on some of our systems. This requires our systems not only to build, but also to maintain. We do a lot of construction. So this is, site oversight, inspection, project management, cost estimating, and managing a budget, and vendors. And a lot of this is managing people and making sure that you are comfortable doing that. You might be working in the middle of the night by yourself at a construction project, overseeing vendors. And if something's not going right, you need to have the confidence to stop the job and make sure things get fixed. So a lot goes into that kind of construction piece. And then we have a whole range of services that kind of keep our business running and keep our business running well and make sure that our clients are getting what they need. So finance and accounting, IT, cybersecurity is more important than ever. That IT department includes, we are very, very, very lucky. We have an IT department that can do our workplace computers and make sure that our teams have what they need to do their work. They also understand the building automation and instrumentation and controls. So we are very, very fortunate that our IT team can do both of those things, but that's a very specialized, those are specialized skills. Environmental health and safety is involved in everything we do. We more than ever have experts working in sustainability. So thinking about engaging the community, figuring out what the community wants, thinking about materials that we're using in building, all of those kinds of things, our emissions, are we composting in the office, that whole range of sustainability things. Are we using water? Are we using water responsibly and to the best of our ability? Those kinds of things. We have human resources, obviously, legal and risk management, business development and sales. Data analysis is just as important as instrumentation and control. One of my colleagues always says that there is data and then there's information. So that analyst is really the one that helps us understand what all of those numbers are telling us, and it's more important than ever. We have customer service throughout every single team in our company. Madeline and I work in marketing, PR, and communications. And then we have, obviously, admin and leadership throughout all of our business. And really, some fundamental things that we're looking for. We want people who are curious and ready to learn. Strong communication skills are important, both written and verbal. Making sure you have people skills and management skills. Even if you're not managing a team, you are often managing vendors and customers and clients. We love people who can work independently and also be a team player. And then just a strong work ethic. I think we have very Midwestern values in our organization, and each of us really carries a lot of responsibility in the work that we do. So we're just always looking for colleagues who are up to that challenge as well. So that's just a little bit about our jobs and about jobs in this industry. And I would be happy to take questions about anything, technology or the work that we do.
Hi, can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Theodore. I work at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and Small Business Assistance. And
Nice.
I'm looking at this from a refrigerants perspective because I've done some work administering grants for commercial refrigeration, but as far as AC, those systems, I don't know much about that. And I was wondering if you could just talk about the use of refrigerants in these systems.
Absolutely. So we have refrigerants in our chillers. So we have large chillers that I think we have, let me just pull up my notes here. So let me just look real quick. We have 10 chillers on our district energy system. So, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that the EPA has a kind of retirement plan for refrigerants. So all systems that use R11 are kind of phased out or have been phased out in our systems. So, so we do have refrigerants in our systems with some of the older chillers that do have an environmental impact. And our newer chillers, and including heat pumps, are using refrigerants that have no environmental impact. So we are really looking at any new equipment we're adding to the system are using those more environmentally friendly refrigerants. Just to kind of let you know kind of what that impact can look like on a yearly basis. So, you know, obviously the refrigerants stay in the chiller and we want them to stay in the chiller. Every now and then when we're repairing a chiller, we might have to remove that refrigerant, and then we would either put the refrigerant back in if that's possible. You know, we obviously work around all parameters that we should with that kind of thing. But we are just very carefully managing that, both for the risk as you know to our employees and to the environment, but also just as sustainably as we possibly can. You know, because that when we're looking at our overall carbon footprint, those refrigerants obviously impact that if we would have a leak or something, you know, and need to replace some. So good news is our newer systems are able to use refrigerants that are less harmful to the environment. We do still have some equipment on our systems that are using the older refrigerants, but as those systems, you know, as those chillers kind of die and we need to replace them, we will be replacing them with systems that have better refrigerants. So there is good news on that front. And
okay, thank you. And like, I can't imagine, I'm trying to visualize that map you were showing. So the 10 chillers, are they all like on your like campus, or are they, maybe
so
that's
we
not
have
the right word, at your central plant?
Yeah, we have 7 at the Kellogg plant, and we have 3 at the 10th Street plant. So one thing that this does do is this eliminates the need for refrigerants in a customer building.
That's where I was going. I was like, do they have to supplement or have an indirect refrigeration? Okay.
Yeah, so unless they would have, you know, like restaurant coolers or something, which we can also run our chilled water through restaurant coolers. Like they may not, you know, I don't know kind of what the refrigerants look like for that, but they do not have chillers on site. So we eliminate that completely from their buildings by having our service. The other thing, I don't know if you're familiar with the well building standards. Do you know those? So this is, so you know, LEED looks at the environmental impact of building a building. Well building standards look at the health and well-being of people working in the building as the building's used. So it's just a really, it's kind of a great set of standards. It was developed by Mayo, the Cleveland Clinic, and it's managed now by the USGBC. But it's just a really great standard. It's looking at water quality, air quality. Do you emphasize people walking upstairs versus elevators? Like it's just a really great standard. There's a few buildings in Minnesota that have been certified well building, but one of the things that it looks at is for air pollution, what we can eliminate is you don't need a natural gas connection, you don't have refrigerants in the building, and then we also eliminate vibration in the building because none of that equipment is rumbling in your basement because it is all offsite. So those are just a few things from that well building standard that we are able to provide for customers connected to.
Very cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll look at that. Yeah, it's new to me.
Yeah. Jen, I'd also be happy to connect you with one of our mechanical engineers if you have more questions.
That would be awesome. I'm always trying to learn. Yeah. Site visits are very helpful.
And I should say I'm an English major, so that's I just my own education. I have an English degree, and you know, obviously writing is a big part of what I do, but I've been here 11 years, so I've learned a lot of the technology. But obviously if you were talking with an engineer, they would have a few more details for you. So
well, I'm an art history major, so
very good. Yes.
Yeah. While learning. Thanks.
Oh, looks like we might have some chat things here. Let me speak.
We were just wondering about a copy of the presentation.
Oh, absolutely. Be happy to share that. How long is that pipeline? So we have the pipes within downtown St. Paul. There are 56 miles. Obviously that's supply pipe and return pipe. And we have it there's some redundancy in the system. So anytime that we add a new customer or we need to do a repair, we might have to have a few customers shut down, but we have built it so that maybe they can be served from another direction or they can be served from a mobile boiler. We really, really, really like to keep our customers online as much as we can. And we work with them whenever we're doing a shut off, we work with them to make sure that there's not some big thing happening in the building that we would need to adjust our timeline. But those pipes, so we've been around now for 40 years, and we are just starting to kind of systematically replace some of those older pipes that were originally put in. So the pipes themselves, you know, can be in use for 50 to 75 years. And we have the potential to always kind of build on this system. So that's another nice thing about district energy is that we can add buildings, whether it's, you know, somebody that maybe we have 2 customers connected and it's somebody between them, or we can expand the system and go beyond. So we always have the potential to add more customers. We also have the potential to add more production assets. So this can be an ever expanding system. And in places like Germany, the Scandinavian countries, England, they actually have entire communities that have district systems and don't have natural gas in their homes. So really it can be a solution that goes much more broadly depending on how much it's supported. So part of the reason we don't serve residences here is because it's a small building load to build a bunch of pipe, you know, so the economics don't work out. But if the government said, we're going to connect everyone to district energy like they have in other countries, it would be a solution that we could use even for houses. Yeah. It is, I will just say, super inspiring to be with all of you. Thank you for the work that you do. It's great to, you know, it's great to teach and share what you know, and also the kind of workforce work is so important. So thank you all. And I'd be happy to do any follow-up if questions come up afterwards. So, and then I think we will be hosting a few of you at the plant. So, you know, again, just happy to support in any way we can.
Could I just ask one more question?
Sure, absolutely.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was just curious, you mentioned earlier a project, a hydrogen project with Caterpillar.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, I'm just curious if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Caterpillar got a grant from the Department of Energy, and I think they're also working with the National Renewable Energy Labs, which is located in Colorado. And they were interested in, so they have so we have combined heat and power here, which is again, making electricity and making heat. They have a combined heat and power generator. So they have a generator that can produce electricity, and then the waste heat that is made from the process of producing electricity can be used in a productive way. And so they were looking there, what they're interested in testing is what's the most efficient use, what's the most efficient mix of hydrogen. So this is a system that can run on natural gas. It can also run on hydrogen, and they will be doing a few months of testing to see what's the most efficient, how efficient can the system get running on hydrogen, or what's the most efficient mix of natural gas and hydrogen or 100% hydrogen to run that combined heat and power generator. So at District Energy St. Paul, they contacted us because we have combined heat and power in our system already. And so they have built, there's a trailer outside of our building on the river level, and which has the cogen generator in there. And really within a few months, we're going to get hydrogen delivered on site to be testing that unit to find the most efficient use of hydrogen in that unit. So it is connected, it will be connected directly to our electrical system eventually. It's not currently because it's turning on and off and our system just can't take that, but we are currently taking the heat from it for our building. So the source of hydrogen, they are working, you know, I don't know how much you guys know about this, but like we don't have a lot of hydrogen in Minnesota right now, even though it's identified as a hydrogen hub to do some of that study and some of that building out of the infrastructure, building out of the process. I'm not sure, it is unfortunately not green hydrogen. There are many colors of hydrogen. It has to do with the sustainability of producing it. Ideally, it would be green hydrogen. I don't know if they were able to access that, and I don't recall where the source of hydrogen is, but I will double check that and get that information back to you. So long term, we will be keeping this unit on site. However, it will run on natural gas. So right now we're using actually Ramsey County's property where where Ramsey County West used to be, where that West Publishing used to be right on the river. We're using that empty property right now to stage the hydrogen, and that will not be available once they're building that building out. So this will be a system that we can use on site, but it will be connected to natural gas on the long term. So, but I will find out about the hydrogen sourcing, what they've come up with for that for you. Oh, you're talking about this in your chemistry curriculum. That's awesome. That's great. So it's very interesting. I just came back from an industry conference, and when hydrogen was first introduced as a topic 3 or 4 years ago, people were laughing them out of the room, and now it's like an entire track in the conference because it's just become such a pervasive part of our conversation. So obviously, something that, when we think about the range of solutions we might find for buildings and potentially for transportation, hydrogen, I think will be part of those conversations when it makes sense. And obviously we want to be making it in a way that is green, because otherwise we're just adding to the problem, right? So.
Do we have any more questions? All right. Well, don't hesitate to reach out if you have more questions. We're going to move on to our next part of the presentation. Just want to say thank you to Janae and Madeline for sharing all that information with us. It was very informative.
Great. Thank you all so much.
If you guys want to stick around, go ahead. But
right. Thank you.
Bye. Okay. And so for the rest of us here, we're going to talk a little bit about the Minnesota State Energy Center of Excellence and the resources we have for the teachers. And I'm going to share a presentation here. Just give me a moment. Okay, can we see a presentation?
Yeah, you'll want to make it full screen.
Okay.
Under share. And then present one up. There you go.
Okay. Now are we seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so today we had our first presentation, the virtual one, with the District Energy, and next Thursday will be the in-person tour at the Hands-on Iman Energy Center that they talked about today. So please sign up, and I'll resend that registration link, and make sure you're wearing long pants, flat closed-toed shoes, prepared to wear safety gear that's provided as well. It'll be about a 45-minute tour. It's right by the Science Museum in St. Paul, and there will be parking information in the registration link. So Logan's going to talk a little bit about the Energy Center.
So the Energy Center is the Minnesota State Energy Center of Excellence. We are a legislatively funded entity that is charged with workforce development connections between industry and educators. So we serve to inspire students, enhance education programs both in K-12, but also in the college realm. And then we also work to engage employers. So those are our 3 charges. We do that in a lot of different ways. I dropped a link to the website there. We do career exploration work. We do classroom visits. We do developing some college programs. It just really depends on what our industry partners are asking for and what our industry or government partners are asking for, and what our colleges and or K-12 systems want to think about, want to noodle on together. there's a lot more info on our website. You can check that out. I don't think I need to scroll through there. The only thing that might be more relevant is there's an educator hub. It just talks about classrooms we were in. It gives you the link to the trailer and or the resources that Megan will show you in a little bit. And then it's also a place where you can catch up with the E3, the annual E3 spaces. You can watch that or subscribe to our Substack, poweringmn at substack.com. And then we will be sending out more information on that too. As for Get Into Energy, that is the Minnesota Energy Consortium, or if you see MEC on anything, they don't currently have a site that I love to share, but I can show you the page that we currently have. We are under a little bit of a branding restructure here. So this is the Minnesota Energy Consortium. So we are partnered with CEWD, which is the Center for Energy Workforce Development on a national level. I currently am the chair of this consortium, but we are meant to bring all of the energy producers, nonprofits, government entities, and folks who are working in the energy workforce space. Our goal is to bring you together and then start solving common problems, right? So building our workforce, building our education needs, and trying to make sure that everyone's working towards the same common goal, which is keeping the lights on for the future. There's a mailing list on there too if you want to subscribe to other things that we have. That'll be how you permanently get on the email list. We found some of your data on online, and so we reached out to some folks just to make sure we were filling this space. But yeah, anyone's welcome to join. It's a free organization. And then I think Megan has a slide later about the other thing that I wanted to say about that. So I'll pause right there.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so a little bit about the resources that we offer to teachers, and I'll send this presentation out so you all can access this link, all the links later. But at the center, we have energy activity kits. Those include Kid Wind turbines, which are great for students to explore wind power, engineering design. And we also have Thames Cosmos wind science kits. The top one in the picture is a bit more simplified. It's great for middle school age students. The bottom one is a bit more complex, has more of the engineering design and gears and stuff like that. So that's great for high school level. Next, we also have hydropower kits. And then our most popular is our solar kits. These are have a variety of activities on solar circuitry. And we put together a easily transportable classroom kit of about 25 panels. So if you ever want to use any of these resources for an activity in your classroom, please reach out to me or Logan. We also have slide decks for wind power and solar power, and they discuss the basics in about 15 minutes. And the solar circuit slide deck also gives background on energy terms and then follows a couple of the labs in the Solar 2.0 that goes along with the panels in the kit. So if you want any of those slide decks, please reach out to me and I can send those along to you. I also included on the slides a few of the great online resources with free science and energy curriculum. It's good links for students to use to discover careers in education and skills that they need to pursue them. So yeah, and then I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about the upcoming events we have. We have on March 24th, the State of Energy Conference in Mankato, and Logan can talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the State of Energy is our first attempt. We usually get together as the Minnesota Energy Consortium twice a year. This is our first attempt at branching out, making it bigger, and trying to build more speakers and relevance to our audiences. So anyone's welcome to attend. RSVP is due to close March 7th. The plan right now is to have a panel in the morning about the energy workforce currently in our state and as compared to national partners. So we do have some national speakers coming in. The following 2 hours are educator speakers for an hour in roundtable formation. If you have something cool that you're doing at your district or in your education sphere, and you want to talk about it to other people or get feedback on it with other educators or industry partners, this would be a great place for you to present. If you want to hear from vice versa, the next hour is industry or nonprofit sector folks presenting on what they're doing, how things are changing, how things are moving in the industry, or what careers they might be seeing, or how to connect with educators better. So that's that next hour. If you know an industry partner that's doing cool stuff, please invite them to present. And then the following last piece is a career fair. It's mostly geared towards folks who will be graduating with their 2-year degrees or certificates from our community colleges. But there's just a space there for folks to talk about what's next, right? If you're thinking about maybe a Green Corps opportunity in the MPCA, or if you're thinking about going into the union apprenticeship, we'll hopefully have folks there to talk through those experiences with students too.
Okay. And then we'll be hosting our larger E3 event in June. This is a 2-day overnight experience, and we're currently working on setting up some in-person tours, wind and solar, planning on having it hosted in northern Minnesota, Hibbing, Mountain Iron area. So registration should open up in March, so keep a lookout for the information. We'd love to have you guys there. And then here's our contact information. And I want to thank you all for joining us today, and please sign up for the in-person tour next Thursday. We have plenty of room. I will send that registration and the follow-up email as well.
And then if you have any questions, you can ask now or let us know, but we'll sit here for a little bit just so that you have space. Thanks, y'all.
Logan, are they going to allow us to take pictures in the inside?
I don't know if we've asked that yet.
Because if I'm not allowed to take pictures